that's going to develop with success, and it'll be broadcast over YouTube. And basically, you'll find one guy in a garage who figures out a way to make his magnets do thus and so, and he gets all whipped up about it, and he videos it and puts it on YouTube. Some other guy is working on a nearly same idea, comes up with a further adaptation. He gets all whipped up and says, hey, neater, 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 I did better than you. and it starts this frenzy. And because the data suggests these people are not in any way motivated by money as the primary goal, that it has become... It starts to become more of an ego thing after a while, and it spreads around the planet, and that's really the fundamental basis for the new electrics that really start developing. We'll see some devices this fall, but we really think that it's going to seriously kick off as part of the Renaissance stuff post-2012, so 2013 and beyond. But we will start seeing some early results of it relatively soon. But mass propagation of the effect will take a number of years because we're going to go through some absolutely horrific time with no money to do anything.
Right, and it's just going to be people finally just, doing something because it gives them something to do.
Well, and also that's the way that wealth is manifest, and that is you create it.
Right.
You grow something and have extra calories to trade for something, and you have wealth.
Right, exactly.
You don't stick bits of paper in a imaginary hole in an imaginary spreadsheet and have it produce anything that's real.
That's correct. It's not tangible.
Correct.
It's not tangible. Well, that's really good information, by the way. Let's move to some of the other pieces of information there. You have some questions. How would some of those questions that you had go in with some of the other things that we did not cover yet tonight?
Well, let's see. Let me jump back there. There's a bunch of stuff that we haven't gone into, but of course it's all interrelated.
Sure.
A lot of it will be for the directly as a result of, for instance, the dollar dying. Okay.
Right.
So we can look at the issue of we have a forecast that it'll be awful hard for our troops to get home from the 1,000 military bases we have all around the planet. We show this is happening in a relatively rapid period of time, not because of military defeat, but because of dollar defeat, because they're serviced by subcontractors that will go out of business so fast that there will be given no thought, nor is there any resources available to supplant those subcontractors by turning the operations back over to the military. It used to be, for instance, that the military supplied its own people with food. That's not the case anymore. It's done through large subcontractors. So as the various companies start experiencing difficulties, they won't have anybody to pick up the slack. One of those things will be transportation of personnel and goods, especially to some of the outlying bases, and it will just lose track of some of these people. So it's just not going to be a good period of time. Dollar death is going to be extremely difficult to explain in anything other than the broader strokes, but it is so impacting on everything that it almost makes sense to consider, if you're planning for anything after November of this coming year, to kind of plan for unexpected impacts from the side effects of the dollar being repudiated as the global reserve currency.
Right.
So, for instance, the current rise in oil, albeit it dropped down, I guess, today a bit, is nothing but a temporary little flat line, really, compared to what it will go to when we see $800 or higher dollar per ounce silver. Then we may well be seeing $500 or $600 a barrel oil, which of course produces $10, $15 a barrel or a gallon of gas. Of course, no one will have work, so they won't really need the gas to go to work. So, so there's all these weird ramifications that go on, but it is survivable. The Russians came through the crash of the empire in a more or less okay fashion and have rebuilt because they have resources, and the resources basically are humans willing to create things. And we can do the same, but we have to understand that the level of suffering will be rather dramatic here. And there will be many, many, many opportunities for us as individuals and as a collective to make stupid decisions. And we need to stop anytime we have to make these decisions, kind of think, what's the first thing I want to do? Well, that's probably the wrong thing. Let me think about this again.
Right.
Because the first thing we're going to want to do is predicated on the way the world used to be, which it is not anymore.
Correct.
And that's going to take some real getting used to.
Yeah, and I've said that 100 times. It's not business as usual, and it's quit being business as usual several years ago.
Correct.
It's just been in a process of change.
Yeah. Now, when we know that we're dealing with alien wars, however that works out linguistically, by about the time we get to the end of 2010, most of the populace will have passed through a severe period of readjustment, and we'll have a new paradigm, a new collective social understanding begin to form around then. So we have one really nasty, rough year, and then a number of less nasty, rough years that follow that. And if you make it through the next 18 months more or less until November of 2010, you should discover that from then on, at least you're adjusted to the new realities. Things may not ease up, but it will seem easier because you're no longer struggling to attempt to return to something that won't occur.
That just won't happen ever again.
Correct.
Yes, exactly.
And it's so radical that it won't happen again that, the entire nature of the social order around you will change.
Right. And it will, and in its time. And we need to create that in a good premise. Well,
I'd say there's the opportunity.
Yes.
And there's the Chinese are marvelous in their understanding as philosophers. Yes, in times of crisis, everything is horrid, but that is also the point of magnificent opportunity.
Yes.
And we have a previous example in our previous depression, which we'll think of as the Little Depression of the last century, because in that period of time, I think 1 out of 7 companies that was started during that period of time at a national level failed. But the usual failure rate is 5 out of 7. And in the roaring 20s, it was 6 out of 7 because there was so much malinvestment, so much money running around that we did stupid things with it. And we've just come through one of those periods of time. And what I find remarkable is that it's going to be so relatively short before we get into this new perception of reality.
Yes.
Instead of perhaps 15 or 20 years of nasty depression, we're going to hit this renaissance period about 2013. Those of us that make it that far. And I kid you not, there's going to be some severe trials for all of us between now and then. But get there by, gritting your teeth and hanging on with your nails and being smart about things. And it should be a relatively exciting boom period for maybe 30 or 40 years as we start wrapping our heads around these new technologies.
And I love it. And, I had something I was going to comment on, and then, of course, that thought just blew out of my head.
I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah. I did want one comment here because it was one comment that I actually got from one of the chat box people, but I had also looked at it when I was looking at the reports. If you could talk just a little bit about the dog poet. We've got about a little less than 10 minutes here to have you on, and talk about that whole scenario around what you, quote-unquote, call the dog poet.
You're talking about the part within the powers that be there?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's... okay, now, I've got to be careful about some of this stuff.
Sure, I know you do.
It's one of these issues where I can't say too much more, in fact. I dare not use much more language than I put in there.
Sure.
Because it front-loads things.
Right.
And also, you start getting into some of these areas, and who knows what level of attention you're going to attract to somebody.
That's true.
Okay, but... basically, and it will make more sense a year from now, if you just remember the idea of a dog poet or a canine lyricist, which is probably a better way of thinking about it, you're going to get, it will make a lot more sense then. But basically, we're going to find that language has powers in ways we had not considered, and that the powers that be in these guys are going to... have a very rough time with this individual. This individual is going to rise over the next we'll probably see visibility, I would think, sometime before March or so of next year, right?
Okay.
And it will continue to be, actually will become something of a cause celeb globally, especially relative to those who don't have. And I got to be real, like I say, I got to be real careful of the language here.
Sure.
I personally suspect that this person is currently struggling with not much of a life in one of the Caribbean islands. Haiti, Dominican Republic, Jamaica, something like that, right?
Okay.
Okay. And I'm not saying another Bob Marley kind of a person, but this person's impact on the planet will be like that. Anywhere you go on the planet now, if there's revolution in the air or anybody has ever thought of it, you'll see a poster of one of two people, Che Guevara or Bob Marley. And this new dog lyricist will be right up there with Bob Marley.
Interesting. Okay.
And they really will absolutely freak when the first of these episodes comes out. And you'll see people that, will do things on TV in response to this that you never thought you would see.
Interesting. This is just, your whole report, by the way, as I read it, I get all these things that come in, that go on a parallel, go out sideways, and it's like you say, there's just so many levels to everything that it's near impossible for us to get to any kind of real major conclusion with any of these things, because it's just so many levels involved.
Sure, complexity upon complexity upon complexity.
Yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely, and how it affects and how it determines and all of that. So it's amazing to me, your reports, and I think you're pretty brilliant there, Mr. Clif High. I think the information that you brought to everyone is exceedingly above and beyond.
Yeah, I say hopefully it's worthwhile, and some lives are changed from it. Basically, what we do is we've been forced by universe to do this. It's grueling work, but basically the idea, we think, is that we're intended to put this information out there as a participating element in the grander changes, just so that some people, as they're waking up, they say, "Oh, okay, it's not quite as bad as I thought it was. It's real bad, but it's not as bad as I really thought it was."
I think we do. I think that's, and somebody told me that when I was really, really young. If it's something that you can imagine, it's probably worse than what it would ever be.
Correct.
In actuality.
Right. And George Ure does that all the time. He says, "Oh, I can see it now. I can see it now." And then I always instantly say to him, "Whew, boy, if you can see it, I know it won't happen that way." No offense to George, but his monkey mind is really intricate, and boy, I would hate to chase that little thing around.
I hope George is listening. We love you, George.
Yes, we do, and he knows that, yeah.
Well, I think the last thing, because we've only got a few more minutes, is some of the things that we didn't get to that I thought was really, really interesting, which was all about the new electrics, and this is like on page 34 of 36 of your report, and it talks about new electrics as a subset of the Omni Humanity Renaissance, and it's also cross-linked over to both the Terra entity, which is changes in the ocean, as well as global pop and populace of USA and all of this stuff. And then there's a rise of magnetic people, interesting, called these Northern Sea Tribes.
I'm actually fascinated by those, because I think I know people that are in fact forming them as I watch. Yeah.
Wow, awesome.
I wrote a little article, and it's free, and it's on my site, about this guy Patrick that I know.
Oh.
And he's up north, and he's part of what I call the New Salish. And so you can just hop to the Half Past Human site, and it's over on the right there. And it gives a little brief background on him. And I think he's an example of at least the American side or the American-Canadian side of the new water tribes, what we're calling water socks around here.
Interesting. I'll have to go read that. I didn't get a chance to get to everything that I wanted to tonight before we had you on.
A lot of words, yeah.
Well, and of course I'm going to invite you to come back on probably within the next couple of months at the longest, and we'll just have you see where everything's at. And if nothing else, I'd love to have you come back on and just talk about, we can do the crop circle thing and some other stuff.
Sure.
I would just love to have you back on, and I'm sure.
Of course, you say that now, but we won't get a chance to do it because there will be new stuff popping up.
Well, then we'll dedicate one show for the new stuff popping up, and we'll dedicate another show just for
the stuff that's already happened.
The crop circle stuff and things like that.
Sounds good.
I will love it, and I will get with you, and we'll get that scheduled. So if you'll give everyone your website as well as George's website and all that good stuff, Clif.
Sure. You can go to halfpasthuman.com. That's where we've got our report for sale for $10, and we've got it's 36 pages. The previous report is 120 pages, and it's there as well. It's $36, and then George Ure does he provides like daily detail. He always calls me up and wheedles more words out of me and puts them on his site. So if you want to really follow this on a daily basis, I urge everybody to read George's writing. He's really good, especially if he gets his monkey mind out of the way. But go to urbansurvival.com and look for his daily report, and it's always quite fascinating. And it is, and it's always fascinating to have you on. And Clif, I just can't thank you enough. We certainly didn't get to everything we wanted to, as usual. Always way bunch of information, and it's just fabulous to have you back. And I will be getting with you, and we'll be posting that to the website. So, again, we thank you very, very much for being here. For the rest of you, don't go away. We have an astrological update coming up. Don't go away. Okay. Bye. Bye.